Hi, everybody. This is Christine Bordelon, Associate Editor of the Clarion Herald newspaper and moderator of our NOLA Catholic Parenting blogs and podcasts. And we're here with Peter Fitty Jr., our editor of the Clarion Herald. Today, I thought we'd dive into the world of Catholic young adults. Who are they? What do they want from faith? This is a demographic, depending on who you speak to, that's hard to reach because of the diversity. I've invited James Behan, the Associate Director of the Young Adult Ministry in Marriage and Family Life for the Archdiocese of New Orleans, and also Peyton Fine, the new president of the Young Catholic Professionals New Orleans chapter, to dive into this subject with me. Well, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon. How are you all?
Doing good. Peyton, I thought I would start with you first. You're a young adult, as you can see. So I wonder if there is any easy way to describe what a young adult Catholic is today.
Absolutely. I think the first thing is there probably isn't an easy way, which is what makes this ministry so challenging. I think I've experienced this in my own life, and I think about my journey in faith. When I was a child, when I went through Catholic grammar school, Catholic middle school, Catholic high school, my faith was always laid out very clearly for me. It was just an obvious part of my life because I was in Catholic schools. Even to a certain extent, while I didn't go to a Catholic university, there was a strong Catholic center on campus where I could become a part of that Catholic center and had a place where I always knew my faith could flourish. But when I got into the real world, for lack of a better term, and started working full time, there isn't that clear and obvious path of what should your faith look like as a young adult. It's a classic moment where you were a student of the faith, you had your faith given to you as part of your schooling. And then when you don't have the connection to a Catholic school that a lot of young parents may have, when you're just a young adult without children, it has to take a much larger part in your life. And then you have to make a much more conscientious decision for faith to be part of your life as a young adult. So in some respects, that's a very inspiring moment to recognize that my faith now is more my own than it may ever be in the rest of my life. But in other respects, it's a very challenging portion and a very scary moment as a young adult to think about faith in that light.
So what energizes you about the Catholic faith? If it's hard to, encapsulate what exactly it is and how to engage in it, what's your entry point?
I think first and foremost, my entry point is what my parents have given to me. I'm incredibly blessed to have parents, and not just parents, but also grandparents who ingrained the faith in me at a very young age, to the point that I look at my life and say every blessing that I've been given, and even all of the challenges that may come in my life, are only present through God. And so the idea of knowing that in my mind, yet choosing to live a life without faith is something that it's something that I just can't comprehend. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say my faith hasn't come in ebbs and flows like many other people, but there was no point in my life where I could have imagined that faith wouldn't be a part of it, because I attribute every blessing that I have in my life to God, and I bring every challenge that I have to God, and I only have that mindset because of my parents. So I think when you ask that question of, well, why am I still here in my faith as a young adult? It's the ideals that my parents gave me of everything good we have and every challenge we need to overcome must come either from or through God. And therefore, the idea of living without that faith is just something that's incomprehensible to me.
Well, I wondered if there are certain events that either you or your friends who are Catholic look forward to doing to express your faith.
There are. I think YCP is part of that. There are young adult ministry programs that are having. I know James has done numerous Christ in the Cities. That was something that I got involved in very early on, moving back to New Orleans. And I can vividly remember probably back in 2019 when I had just moved back to the city, attending a Christ in the City at St. Rita, right across from Dominican High School. And they had just a phenomenal hour of adoration and praise and worship music. That was something that was an early entree into my life as a young Catholic moving back to New Orleans. I know YCP, we always look forward to happy hours that YCP has, the executive speaker series that YCP has that also come with food and drink. Even at the age of 27 now and a young professional, anytime someone is offering either free or discounted food and drink and tie
You're
it to
there.
faith. Exactly. You can get a lot of young adults pretty excited about that pretty quickly.
Okay.
And Peyton, I spoke recently to the YCP, and I was amazed about the turnout. The turnout was fantastic. And I know it wasn't just because of the food, but it was really encouraging to see how many young Catholic adults there are who take their faith seriously.
Absolutely. And it's inspiring, I think, to the other young adults. I think every opportunity we have to give young adults, the moment to express their faith is not just an opportunity to show young adults, to literally give them the space to practice their faith, but it is also an inspiration. At times, being Catholic and being a young adult can seem lonely because it isn't the most prevalent thing that we see in our society today. But when you come to, whether it be a YCP event, whether it be a parish held event, whether it be a young adult ministry event through the Archdiocese, the opportunity to recognize that you're not alone in expressing your faith as a young adult is just as inspiring for the young adults who attend it as it is for the adults who may be involved in it, like you mentioned.
Right. Well, James, I want to go to you because I know you've been listening to Peyton, and he actually mentioned your office and some events that you have. So tell me about what young adult ministry office for the Archdiocese does. What is it set up to do, and how you guys are reaching the young Catholic adults?
Thank you for having me on, Christine. And so the CYO Youth and Young Adult Ministry is a broad umbrella of services and programs. I think most importantly, we assist the Archbishop in his work to reach out to the young church, the church that he loves to call the Church of Now. So particularly for myself, as the Associate Director for Young Adult Ministry and Marriage and Family Life in this Young Adult Ministry realm, it's helping parishes, helping college campus ministries, and helping ministries and organizations like YCP, Young Catholic Professionals, that Peyton's the president of, to do what they do to outreach and to provide opportunities for prayer, community, service, and evangelization for young adults here in the Archdiocese of New Orleans. That's the nice elevator pitch about what we do. But I think what we also do is provide the opportunity to connect with young adults, to help them know that there are people that look like them, that have the same life experiences as they do. I think if we could have 500,000 Peytons who have that energy and passion for their faith, we would have a rockin' Archdiocese. And I think that we have that combination of reaching to folks who have that energy and passion and want to live out their faith, either because they've had the background like Peyton has had with his parents and grandparents providing a foundation, and they either have experienced it here in New Orleans, or they come to New Orleans for school or for new employment opportunities, or just as much, it's the evangelization opportunities to reach out to people who, for whatever reason, for being married or getting ready to be married to a Catholic spouse to be, or just hearing the call of the Holy Spirit in their hearts to find something deeper or something more in their lives, that we provide either our large scale archdiocesan events, or we help promote the events that parishes, college campus ministries, and organizations like Young Catholic Professionals hold to connect the people and put them where they need to be to grow and to develop in their faith.
Well, have you been involved in young adult ministry for a while?
Yes, I may look youthful, but I've been involved with young adult ministry for my entire career of over 15 years. First in college campus ministry, over a number of colleges and a number of states, and a college campus ministry music minister. And most recently, I've been here in the Archdiocese Young Adult Ministry Office for 2 years. So I've been almost the entire gamut of a young adult myself, along with the work that I've been doing in young adult ministry.
I was going to ask Peyton, if you could push a button, Peyton, and talk about at the parish level, what could a parish or parishes do to serve young adults perhaps better than they might be currently doing? Are there any 1 or 2 or 3 things that you think parishes could do?
I think having a formalized and supported young adult group is the first key. There aren't a lot of parishes in New Orleans, and I will also comment and say there aren't a lot of parishes in Chicago, which is where I lived prior to New Orleans, that have a formalized young adult group that says we are here for the adults of our parish between the ages of 21 and 39, And we recognize that there's a need to be filled, and we want to be that fulfillment for people. I think something as simple as saying we have that group and here's our email list, and then you'll know about the events is a huge first step for parishes to take. I'll sort of call out and use one simple example. St. Catherine has a formalized group, but it runs almost entirely out of a group meet, which is a group messaging app. There's no formalized board or monthly meetings, but just knowing that there's a group of people that whenever someone's looking to maybe go to a bar or go to a mass or go to an adoration. I can remember just last week, someone was in that group message asking, hey, what are the hours of St. Catherine's Adoration Chapel? And if I can't make those hours, what are some other parishes that have hours for adoration? And all of that is present just by formalizing the idea that a parish wants to support young adults. So I think that to me is the first step, is just saying we have a ministry for you and we want you to be a part of it. Because just by looking on a website and realizing that there's a young adult group, you feel so much more welcome to that parish and want to become a part of and maintain your faith. Secondly, I think the idea of meeting people where they at is really important. I know that the Archdiocese has done things like theology on tap, and recognizing that, in that young adult phase, people may have fallen away from the faith. They may be getting back into the faith or coming to the faith for the first time because they've potentially met a spouse, as James has said. So having some of those events that are a low bar to entry, for lack of a better term, recognizing that someone may not know as much about their faith, but want to learn more. So having something like a theology on tap that brings in a social element, that brings in a food and drink element, that feels very culturally appropriate for the city of New Orleans, is all opportunities that make it very easy for a young adult to maintain their connection to their faith. And I think anytime a parish or multiple parishes want to sponsor that together or want to become a part of it, it makes a huge impact with a relatively small investment, both in time and money.
Well, I know the slogan for the young Catholic professionals is working in witness for Christ. So Peyton, I know you're new president, but what does that exactly mean? Working in witness for Christ.
I think for me, it means that in each moment of my professional career, I have a recognition that I can offer up whatever I'm doing for the betterment of my faith. Our prayer that we say at the end of each meeting or each happy hour is the St. Joseph, the worker prayer. And there's a line in that prayer that always sort of sticks out to me, which in essence says, even when the work is toilsome, let me recognize that I can offer it up to God for my sins or the sins of the world. And I think so often as a young adult and as a young professional, I don't always see the tie of my work to my faith. For full disclosure, I work in finance, and there are many, many days when I'm talking about insurance or talking about a monthly financial report or a quarterly financial statement, there's not always the clear understanding of how that relates back to my faith. But recognizing that for each moment that I'm working, even when I don't see that connection, or even when the work is toilsome or boring or not always interesting, recognizing that there can be a moment even in those challenges to offer up my work for the souls in purgatory or for the souls tirelessly working on earth is a really impactful moment. And so when someone talks about working in witness for Christ at YCP, that's what it means to me. And I think for many of us, that's what it means to work in witness for Christ, is that no matter what moment we're in or where we are in our professional careers, faith can be part of it, even in the most mundane of moments.
Are there favorite parts, Peyton, of YCP, certain events that you've really enjoyed since you come back in town, and that's kind of what kept you going because these events just really impacted you?
Absolutely. And I think it's really our two main events. There are monthly executive speaker series and then our monthly happy hour. So sort of to start with the executive speaker series, we bring in different Catholic professionals, typically executives, who talk about how faith has impacted their role in their professional lives, and also leaves us with the idea of what we can do potentially for the next month until the next speaker series for how we can maybe take faith and make it an even larger part of our daily lives as professionals. And having that sort of monthly check-in where I know that I'll see a bunch of other young Catholics, like Mr. Finney mentioned, and sort of be inspired by their presence. And then not only that, but hear some really practical advice from different executives is very powerful and impactful and kept me coming back. And then more so of a social opportunity is our monthly happy hours that we have sort of throughout the city. We typically rotate them around different area bars. And so it's an opportunity to see different parts of the city or different bars that I wouldn't have already seen. But B, it's also an opportunity to recognize that there are lots of people who want their Catholic faith to be a part of not just their professional lives, but also their social lives, and are looking to make connections with other Catholics and looking to really build up a virtuous community that can drive their faith, not just, at Mass once a week or at an explicitly Catholic event, but can be part of their day in and day out lives. And so both of those events are kind of the cornerstones of YCP, and they're really what drives, at least in my case, sort of my coming back week in and week out, and not only that, but choosing to take on now a leadership role within YCP.
Right. Well, I know the pandemic's affected everybody. So James, I wanted you to tell me a little bit about how it's affected your ministry and some of the live events that you guys have for the young Catholic adults.
Sure. I think it's challenged in that it's prevented, especially from March of 2020 through May of 2021. We didn't have Christ in the City until we came back to St. Rita this past May, and we haven't been able to hold Theology on Taps as we normally would hold them. I think what this has done, not just here in New Orleans, but also nationally, is really involved or invited the young church, the young Catholic Church, to use their gifts and their talents to find creative ways in order to share the gospel and to share community with one another. Especially at the beginning of the pandemic, I found myself at home with my wife and our daughters and trying to find a way. I live in Mandeville, so one of the things was that I was physically distanced, not just socially distanced, but I had a bridge that kept us from doing the work that we needed to do. So it was trying to find ways of, especially in the midst of Lent, to throw the phone on and do the Divine Mercy Chaplet on Tuesdays, and to try to find other opportunities to reach out to people through the use of social media, through the use of Zoom. We also did, over the summer of 2020, Claire Gallagher, who's a youth minister and a campus minister at Dominican, and I did a 7-week Theology on Tap book club deal, breaking open the beautiful document that's called Christ is Alive, that is the Pope's love letter to the young church, and how he calls us to affirm that Christ is alive and that Christ loves you and Christ desires what's best for you. And over time, there's other places have had virtual conferences throughout the country. And it's trying to find that balance, because we know that we're used to this way of talking with each other through seeing each other in Zoom squares, and trying to also realize that is distancing, but it's also helpful because of the fact that young adult ministry spans the gamut of 18 to 39-year-olds. So it could connect college students that are away from home here in New Orleans. It could also provide an opportunity for young adults who are busy professionals or are new parents that are young adults, but are still seeking to experience their faith, to have these opportunities at their time and their convenience to connect and to be a part of things that they may not have been able to be a part of otherwise. I think that that's been one of the beauties, if there is any grace that has come from the masks and the hand washing and the distancing and the things being what we could maybe feel is taken away from us, has been something of a simplification to ask ourselves to recognize what's sacred and unique and important in our lives as well. And especially at this point in time, as we're starting to look at the calendar and starting to look at the news and the statistics, where we're going to need to potentially be creative again of preparing to have events, but also to be prepared to have a plan B, just in case we need to be considerate and charitable and wise in the ways that we offer events to people.
Sure. So for both of you then, online and Zoom events have kind of replaced maybe some of the in-person events. Is that what I'm hearing?
For YCP, we've definitely leaned into Zoom some more. One of the events, actually called Refiner's Fire, is something that's become a bit of a national event for all of YCP. And I think that's been great, because by doing the event virtually, we're able to get a truly national audience, and you recognize that, there are young Catholic professionals, not just in New Orleans, but throughout the country. And we've been able to attract some wonderful speakers. for the most part, because so much of the importance of YCP is having that community aspect and being in person, we've been able to, using outdoor venues, using different larger spaces, we've been able to avoid too many actual Zoom events. Sadly, we did have to cancel our event that was originally scheduled for tomorrow, August 10th. But as we try to figure out, like James said, we're looking at, for upcoming events, how do we do outdoor happy hours? How do we do outdoor executive speaker series? How do we do potentially, whether it be an outdoor retreat or an outdoor panel discussion, whatever it takes for us to be able to continue to bring people, like Julie Ungarino, who works on our board, says, how do we bring people together socially so that we don't have to social distance, but we can still find ways to safely physically distance, is really our goal. And so, you know, like James, we're all praying that we have to do that as little as possible coming up, but we don't want to do anything that would ever put our community or our members at risk with everything that's going on in the world right now.
Sure.
I'd say it's the same thing on our side as well, of starting to have plan Bs when we maybe not have always had plan Bs. Maybe if anything, it would have been because there was a rain out for something outdoors. But now there needs to be that real scenario of what happens if we can't hold an event with 100 people, and having pie in the sky and really, really good, hopeful estimates and goals for our events. What happens if those goals can't be met? And trying to find the ways to be creative and inventive and innovative about it.
Well,
Really, for either of you, are there any internet tools or online either retreats or prayer programs that you are familiar with that have really maybe impacted your life, that maybe a young adult might say, hey, I've been a little dry in my faith, struggling with my faith. Yeah, maybe go check out this thing online. I don't know if there's anything like that that you might enjoy doing in your personal life, maybe Peyton.
There are two things that stick out to me and both really focus on scripture. One is Faith ND, which is a service through the University of Notre Dame that every day sends that day's gospel, a short reflection for the gospel, and a short prayer. That's something that I've done basically every day. It just comes to my inbox and it's the first thing that I do in the morning. I'm still lying in my bed and I use my phone in my bed like every doctor tells me I'm not supposed to, but just lying in the bed. And the first thing I do in the morning is look at that email and I read the gospel for the day. I read the reflection and I say the short prayer. That's been a tool that's been really useful to me. The other thing that I've dabbled in and a lot of my friends have really taken on this year is a program from Father Mike Schmitz, which is more so in a podcast form. But each day, Father Mike Schmitz is sort of attempting to read through the Bible over the course of 365 days. And so a number of friends have taken on that much larger commitment as well. And so at least in my experience, I would point to both of those. If you're sort of just coming back to the faith and looking for an easier entree, I definitely suggest Faith ND's daily gospel reflection. But if you're looking to really take a bigger step and really dive into the scriptures, Father Mike Schmidt's podcast has been really phenomenal for a number of my friends.
I too am a daily Bible in a Year podcast follower. At the beginning of the year, it was the #1 podcast in all of podcasts. That was pretty wild that a Catholic Bible podcast was the #1 podcast in all of podcast land. So it is, and it's beautiful. As he said in a previous episode, it's planting seeds right now. So there are those of us who are going through it day to day, but it's also going to be there for years, God willing, that people will be able to access it and that we can refer to and say, well, I mean, that whole year has passed. So now you have 365 days and ways to dive and to say by the end of 2021 that you have read the entire Bible is wild. And it's not too late. Much like any other evangelization opportunity, it's not too late to jump in and to do that. That Bible in a Year is also not only free and available on podcasts, but the other one I would suggest that I use personally is an app called Hallow. It's a $70 investment for a year. So if you gave up one fancy coffee a month, you could have a whole year's worth of access to Bible in a Year. Some of the best Catholic artists and professionals and speakers and presenters and authors throughout the country providing daily reflections It's been a wonderful app to be a part of, and it's simple to use. It connects to your health apps on your phone as well. I think that is always the case of, there is as Peyton was just kind of inferring as well, there's a challenge to make sure that our technology and our phone doesn't become an idol. It doesn't become a false god in our lives. But I think if we allow it and make conscious choices to make sure that they're not a false idol, but rather a reflection of Christ in what we see and what we take in, it just helps us. And it's so amazing. It's quick evangelization of, you can send that share button to send a text to somebody or to post it on Facebook. I think that's there. It's also as simple as somebody just sharing what they're reading, or if they just left this amazing holy hour, to very tastefully take a photo and say, I was just with Jesus for an hour and it was amazing. Or I heard this song and it made me think of my relationship with God. There are simple ways that a young adult or anybody can use technology in order to show what inspires them or how their faith is being influenced. And it also shows a little bit of what I like to call digital discipleship.
Sure. Well, phones have made it so much easier to share, what you enjoy, especially about faith, with other people. But I know it's amazing that we're already in August. I mean, I can't even believe this. And so in the fall, we're used to the World Youth Days. We hold them here. And, since St. John Paul started this, long time ago. What's going on with World Youth Day? I heard maybe this year we're not going to do an in-person event. James, do you know what we're going to do locally yet?
It would seem like it's leaning towards that. I'm going to wait for my supervisors and for the Archbishop to formally announce that, if that's the case. But it's kind of, it would seem like if larger events like Jazz Fest are being canceled,
Right.
that the desire is to be considerate and charitable, and not provide an opportunity for youth or young adults to be in a place where they could be sick and harm can take place.
Sure.
In terms of the global World Youth Days that you've talked about with Pope John Paul II, the next one is set for 2023 in Lisbon, Portugal. So that this is about the time where diocesan offices start weighing the pros and cons of, do we put together a group? And I think we're there as well in the Archdiocese of New Orleans. I mean, personally, I've been to 3 of them.
I was going to ask that if either of you have been to
Yeah.
one, and what is it about those events that energize the young church?
Yeah, Peyton, have you been to any of them?
I haven't been to any of the true World Youth Days that sort of
Right.
rotate around, but I've been to numerous of our local World Youth Days here in New Orleans. So at least as someone who went to it in high school, I think, the first thing that energizes you is just seeing so many other people in your exact same shoes energized by their faith. But I know what sort of came away from me, one of the most powerful moments of at least the local World Youth Day, and I've seen this at a number of conferences, is seeing sort of this army of priests, for lack of a better term, seated in some massive space and seeing the lines wrapping around, whether it be conference room columns or college and high school gyms, all to get to confession, is what will be my seared image of all of those World Youth Days. Recognizing that we are all flawed, yet God calls us right back each and every time in those moments. And there are so many people who want to experience that forgiveness and that call back. Those are always the images of all of my, at least local World Youth Days, that just never leave my mind.
Yeah, and hopefully, if not this year, the next year, other youth will be able to take part in the NOLA Catholic Youth Conference. So I personally have been to 3 of the Global World Youth Days, in 2002 in Toronto, in 2008 in Sydney, Australia, and then 2011 in Madrid, Spain. And so I've been to one with the last one with Pope John Paul II, St. John Paul II, and 2 with Pope Benedict. And it is this amazing experience. It's a Pentecost experience, is really the best way I could describe it, of you are with the Vicar of Christ, you're with the successor of St. Peter and this global body of Christ. It's an outdoor music concert. It's it's a Woodstock and it's a mass all rolled into one, and it's the Olympics all rolled into one, with flags flying everywhere and people so proud of where they come from, but also who they believe in and what they believe in, that they believe in a one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. And it's just wild to be part of this positive movement of people that flood the streets of a major city in the world. And if you all have the same name tags or the same book bags on, that you know that it's your people who are there, and you get to meet people, especially if we speak the same language, to learn where you're from, to celebrate and to dance and to pray together more than anything else. Of even when it comes time for the large masses that they hold, you'll have a variety of languages, but at the same time, that's one of the beauties of our universal Catholic faith, is at the same times we're all saying the same prayers, just in a variety of languages. And then that grace of the Holy Spirit, when all those prayers that are gathered together by the Holy Father. It's inspiring. It's life-changing experiences for myself and for anybody who attends. It really is, in many cases, a very vocation-affirming experience. You've had a lot of vocations that have come to the priesthood and to the religious life and to married life through the experience of a World Youth Day. And it certainly is a great opportunity for any youth or young adult, if they are able to do it at least once in their lives. I've been really, really lucky to go to 3, but to do it at least once in one's life is pretty significant and spectacular.
Well, James, previously you and I have talked about the importance of building young adult ministry, because these young adults are going to be parents one day, and they're going to be the first role models for their kids to experience faith. So, I mean, how might parents who have young adult children encourage them to be involved, in some kind of young adult ministry or events? What would you say to parents to get their kids, to get involved in some kind of Catholic events?
Sure. To Christine, I think that there are the 2 levels of not only the parents of young adults, but also young adults who are parents as well. That there's those 2 layers, where we have wonderful people like Peyton who have this bedrock of faith as their foundation. Those are the type of things that are easy. When you look through the bulletin in your parish, or you look online at what our Archdiocese holds, or a ministry like the Young Catholic Professionals holds, you can easily pass that along. For parents where it may be a little bit more challenging, where you've had your child and you brought them K through 12, or maybe even through Catholic college, and then they come home and they make different choices, I think that's a little more challenging. What I would encourage would be 2 things. Would be, 1, to invite when it's appropriate, to respect the adult choices that your sons or your daughters are making. But along with that, I have in my heart all the time parents in that situation, St. Monica. And for those who don't know about St. Monica was the mother of St. Augustine. We know him as this great theologian and bishop and doctor of the church, but he lived a really, really wild life prior to his conversion. But through it all was St. Monica praying within the depths of her heart, praying through the anguish that her son wasn't experiencing this faith and this relationship with Jesus Christ that she had, and always praying for the Holy Spirit to do something inside of his heart. I think that that's a great model for moms and dads who have children who they brought to the baptismal font, and they made that promise, like my parents did, to be the first teachers of faith. I think that there are those components of praying, of offering up, much like Peyton was talking about with Young Catholic Professionals, of offering up the struggles of one's work for the glory and for the betterment of the world, of offering the pain and suffering that a parent might have because their children aren't experiencing the faith the way that they were taught or the way that they hope, offering it up to let God do something with it, to take this Good Friday experience and turn it into an Easter Sunday. But whenever possible, to also think of your child's strengths and loves and gifts and talents, because those gifts and talents could be used at a parish, somebody who's computer savvy, to be able to say like this, our parish needs this. I know it's not a ministry thing right now, but they need somebody to like wire the network a little better. Can you do that for them? Or I know you're really, really good barbecuer. They have this event and they just need somebody to flip burgers. And then they could be around guys in a men's club that are on fire with the Lord. And they're not only on fire with the Lord, but they're good dudes. And it's those relationships that are built that's where the evangelization and the conversion can take place. I think that there are those pieces for young adult parents, just to remember that promise that we make when we bring our children to the baptismal font. And my good friend and colleague, Deacon Michael Whitehouse, who's now in the Catholic Education and Faith Formation Office, often has used the analogy of the oxygen mask, of when we're in a plane with our children, if there's an emergency and the oxygen masks come down, the first thing we do is we put it on ourselves before we put it on our kids. So we need to continually have the oxygen, the holy breath of the Holy Spirit, in order to be authentically modeling to our children the faith that we hope to pass on to them, especially if we have children who are going to school in a Catholic education environment and are being told this is good, this is great, and this is beautiful, to not have a conflicting story when you come home and say, that's not important. That stuff is just, you do what you got to do because we really want you to have a good Catholic education, but that's not important. That's absolutely not what we want. What my hope and my prayer is that parents who are young adults find those opportunities and take the time. It's as simple as downloading an app or a prayer thing and making sure that you as a couple share your faith together to build that relationship as a husband and a wife, that you communicate and that your kids see you praying. I think that there are those components for young adult parents and for parents of young adults.
Well, James, thank you for those beautiful words of advice, for parents of all ages. And I wondered, tell me how a young adult can contact your office for the Archdiocese.
Sure. The fastest way would be nolacatholic.org/YAM for young adult ministry. That's where they'll see all the events that we have that take place. If you're social media savvy, I would say that the fastest way would be on our Instagram account, which is instagram.com/NOLA, NOLA_YAM. Anything that would be there would also link you to other social media accounts that we have. And that way you can find a way to contact me as well.
Well, Peyton, I wanted to ask you, what do you think about your vision for the future of the young Catholic professionals? And how can the young Catholic professionals contact you?
Absolutely. So in terms of contact, we have a website, ycpneworleans.org, which is where you can find all of our events. It gives our sort of long-term calendar outlook. You can also get an idea of the types of programming that we offer. Similar to James, we are active on social media platforms. The easiest one to get to us on is just by searching YCP New Orleans on Facebook. And similarly, you can get your event notifications through Facebook if you like to do it that way. You'll also find links to our Instagram and Twitters there. In terms of what the vision is, for us, it's continued growth. And I think it's continued recognition that this is an opportunity and a ministry that young adults who are professionals can come to us and recognize that we can maybe strengthen their faith. Like James said, as each of us sort of go out into the world each and every day, we need that oxygen of the Holy Spirit, and that can come in all different forms. And so the idea that YCP can play just a small part in serving in the broader Catholic ministry here in New Orleans is really my goal with the organization as we continue to move forward. So for anyone who might be listening and knows someone who's looking for the ministry or is looking for the ministry themselves, my biggest thing to say is that our growth is really built by invitations just like this. And so whether I'm giving you the invitation now as you listen, or you can provide that invitation to someone else, I'd be eternally grateful for anyone who wants to join us and see what we're about and see what this ministry could do for them, as I know it's had a really impactful moment on my life.
Well, I appreciate you guys joining me today. We've really gotten a little peek inside this ministry to young adults, which, as we were talking about, is all over the place. And so we just try to reach them, kind of Peyton, what you said, where they are in whatever way we can. So thanks for joining us today, and stay tuned for our next NOLA Catholic Parenting Podcast. In the meantime, read our NOLA Catholic Parenting columns in the printed Clarion Herald. And also you can find us online at clarionherald.org, or our blogs 3 times a week at nolacatholicparenting.org.